Even the most seasoned and senior leader does not need a resume longer than 2 pages. Now, that is different for academia because that's called a CV and you include all your research, and that's fine. But in the corporate world, maybe if you are a CEO of years and years, you can have 3 pages. But in this day and age, 2 pages is maximum.
Well, hello, everyone. I am so excited to welcome you to the Thank Me Later show, where we help you master your money and transform your life. I'm excited to be your host, Janai Thornton, and today we're going to transform and get some self mastery over a really important topic, which includes how to find that dream job, how to stand out when you're looking for that dream job, and of course, making the maximum that we deserve and we want for that dream job. So, happy to introduce a friend of Thank Me Later, a friend of mine, Miss Jasmine Adams, who is going to be our guest. Hey, Jasmine, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Hi,
Yeah.
Janai. Thank you for having me.
So let me tell you about this superstar Jasmine before we get into this amazing conversation. So Jasmine is a human capital expert with a passion for career advancement, pay equity, and diversity inclusion. She is the founder and managing partner of Career Convos, and she has over 15 years of global management consulting and talent performance, executive recruitment, and compensation experience in a multitude of different industries, but including media and entertainment, finance and technology. Now, she's also author of the book F You Pay Me, which is a salary negotiation playbook. Love that title, by the way.
Yes.
Wait a minute, pay me, girl. Wait a minute, we got to get paid out here. Got to get paid. Thank you, Jasmine, for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored to be here. I absolutely love the way that I'm not even going to say speak, but minister to folks out there about how to get their life together and how to take hold of their finances. And I'm really happy to contribute to that through your platform.
So let's level set for our conversation today. And just so we can kind of set the stage for everybody. So, I hear all the time from people, they're saying, certain companies, they feel like that they're always posting for positions. They don't seem to be hiring, or people don't feel that they can get hired, or really not sure how to stand out. It's funny. My husband, David, and I, we were in the car together yesterday, just hearing all these conversations about even in technology and not technology, but in different areas where people thought that they were more safe from a career perspective, particularly on the
Right.
technology side, where they're laying off people or hiring
Yep.
significantly less people. So things are
Yep.
constantly changing. So just kind of want to level set that before we get into these questions. I have some questions for you, and we have some questions from some outside folks as well. So let's just jump right
Okay.
on in.
Let's jump in.
So, first of all, how do you recommend people set themselves apart? When there's so many people potentially applying for the same job, how can you separate yourself?
Sure, sure. The first thing that I want to do is give your audience some context. So, under my firm, Career Convos, I have an executive search arm. So, I personally am out there identifying candidates, selecting candidates, and hiring candidates for my clients. I specifically work in media and entertainment. And so I do executive search for Black-owned media companies. And right now, for example, I can say that there's a very prominent basketball player who has partnered with someone who has helped build Jay-Z's company and other companies. So they have a media company and they are hiring for a senior level role. And so my search probably spanned 200 people
Wow.
in terms of identifying, who is the right person for this role. So back to your question about how do you stand out? The number one thing that I tell people is don't make HR or recruiters or the hiring manager search in your resume to understand if you are the right fit. So say you are in a job right now that may not be a one-to-one for the job you're applying for, but maybe your previous role or two roles ago is exactly the job that you're applying for. I always tell people on your resume, you should have a relevant experience and then a work history experience section. And under that relevant experience, that's where you can pull up right at the top of your document everything that you need the hiring manager or the company to know that is directly correlated to the job that you're applying for. And so that's one quick tip that I tell people because when you're reviewing hundreds of resumes, you might spend 15 seconds looking at that document.
Right.
So if I have to go to the next page to see if you are the right fit, that's taking too much time. So that's one of my suggestions for folks out there looking for their ideal role.
Another thing that I have found interesting and almost frustrating trying to give advice to people who are looking to make a change within their career is
Mhm,
how to stand out online. Because, before there was an opportunity really to talk to people, there was more intimacy. So if you're only uploading your
mhm,
resume or you're completing an application, Jasmine, how can
mhm.
you stand out in that particular situation where everything is virtual or just digital?
Mhm, mhm. No, that's a great question as well. The two things that I would say, hopefully in this day and age, everyone has a LinkedIn page. LinkedIn isn't just for corporate anymore. If you are a creative, then you probably need a LinkedIn page as well. So between your LinkedIn page and even in this day and age, an Instagram page, you can have one for your professional career, the skill sets that you are bringing to the table. And so being able to curate that with I would say, the correct buzzwords that are applicable in your industry. So, for example, if someone used to do or someone does project management, that was a term that existed 10 years ago and exists today. But now, if we're thinking about transformation office and business operations and I would add those terms in as well to make sure that as people are either looking at your profile or searching for the right candidates, then all of those applicable phrases pop up and helps you to stand out. The other thing that I would say is also leaning in a little bit about who you are as a person, as well as your professional certifications and achievements. So, for example, if you also mentor, if you are part of a nonprofit, if you sit on a board, if you have certain hobbies, then including those in your profiles as well helps folks to understand who you are as a well-rounded person.
Yeah. And I'm so happy that you mentioned LinkedIn. That's Tiana, who is our marketing director for Thank Me Later, was really instrumental for me to really get engaged and think in LinkedIn last year. And it has been
Hmm.
a game changer for me.
Hmm.
I'm not looking
Hmm.
for a job, but the connections that I have made have been incredible. So, people,
Hmm.
please use it. Please keep your LinkedIn profile updated. And
Hmm.
when people are out there looking, you could save so much time. Like Jasmine said, you got to give them a layup here. You got to make it easy for folks. Tell your own story using LinkedIn for sure.
Hmm.
So, let's talk about networking.
Mm.
So I know that could be a great way to potentially make some connections in the context of
Yes.
looking for a new role. Kind of
Hmm.
give us some advice or some tips that you have for people who really want to, in addition to sitting at home on the computer applying or having that LinkedIn profile. Any tips
Hmm.
related to
Hmm.
networking you think could be helpful for people?
Yeah, sure. So I always take a step back and understand that a lot of people when they hear the word networking, sometimes has a visceral reaction to it. They're like, "Oh, I'm an
Right.
introvert," or
Right.
networking is so much effort. And so networking again in this new digital age looks a lot different, or it can look you have a lot of options besides going to an in-person event and exchanging business cards, which people don't necessarily even have those anymore. So one of the things that I recommend to folks is again, I'm going to build on what you just said about LinkedIn. That's a great place to start where you can Ideally, identify people who are in your network, whether you went to school with them, whether they were at a previous company that you either you worked at or a company that you're looking to join, and understanding kind of what their career path is, and then asking them just through a note. One of the tips that I suggest for folks is when you hit connect, you can add a note, and that's how you can message someone, even
Right.
though you're not connected to them. And I'll give you a perfect example. I've always had a passion for careers. A couple of years ago, I was considering a career advisory role at the business school at USC. So previous in my career, I was at Deloitte, and I found someone who used to also work at Deloitte, and they actually work at USC. So I just sent a message and I said, "Hey, we don't know each other, but we have had similar professional paths. I would love to pick your brain on how you made that transition." And this is, a cold note. They don't know me, but because I identified what we had in common, and I told them I want to learn from that. I didn't say give me a job
Right.
or I see or are you hiring. I just said I want to learn more about how you got to where I'm trying to get to. That person immediately responded, and I was able to have a live conversation with them, which provided a myriad of information on how I could move towards that goal. And so that is a form of networking that people may not think of initially when we say the word networking.
Yeah. And I would have never thought about LinkedIn in the context of networking, and
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate, like you said, instead of saying, help me, help me, help me, do this for me, connect me, like, hey, I could tell you've taken the time to do some research about me based on what you
Right.
said. So I
Mm-hmm.
would appreciate
Mm-hmm.
that. And can we have a quick conversation? I love that.
Yep. Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
that. All right, Jasmine, another question for you. So I know with your over 15 years of experience, I know you have
Mm-hmm.
seen every mistake known to mankind as people are navigating, whether they're applying for a role or potentially even interviewing for a role. Can
Mm-hmm.
you give, some examples of some of the common mistakes that you see and more importantly, how people can avoid them? Just a couple on both sides, applying for that role and also interviewing for the role.
Sure, sure. I would say three come to mind because I am actively executive recruiting. So the first thing that I would say is even the most seasoned and senior leader does not need a resume longer than 2 pages. Now, that is different for academia because that's called a CV and you include all your research, and that's fine. But in the corporate world, maybe if you are a CEO of years and years, you can have 3 pages. But in this day and age, 2 pages is maximum. And you just have to figure out there's so many resume templates. Another
Right.
tip that I'll give to your audience is Canva actually has amazing resume
Oh,
templates
I love
where you
that.
don't have to sit. Yes, yep. You just literally type in resume. You can even type in your industry and it'll give you all kinds of resume layouts. So you don't even have to guess it.
I love
And then you
that.
just put in your information. And so therefore you have no excuse. It can fit on 2 pages. So that's one of the issues that I've seen as people have these laundry list resumes.
Right.
Again, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, people looking through resumes are not spending more than 15, maybe 20 seconds just kind of skimming it to see if you're a good fit. The other thing that I've seen, a mistake I've seen people make, I would say specifically on resumes, is they'll have all of the skill sets that make sense for the role. So I'm proficient in Microsoft Outlook and Project, or I know how to use Asana. But then they'll have kind of the level of proficiency and have like little bubbles, indicating if I'm familiar or if I'm an absolute expert. We don't need to know that. Just tell us that you have
Right.
those skills with
Right.
those systems. You're taking up too much space
Right.
of how exactly proficient you are in that area. So that's a space waster that I advise folks. And then I would say another kind of very simple um, issue is that people, when they're submitting their resumes, they just might save it as resume or resume spring 2024. Always save your, first of all, PDF your document and save it as your name and resume. Because again, as we're pulling these down, if you apply on Indeed or LinkedIn or directly, I just need to be able to know that this is your document, whose it is. It's easy to scan and send to the next person. And so those are just a couple of little tactical, easy things that I would advise folks as they're thinking about putting themselves out there for the role.
It's interesting, the advice or the tips that you're giving, Jasmine, how simple they are, but how impactful they are. Because, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, time is everything. If I'm only going to spend
Yes.
15 to 20 seconds max looking at your resume, like you need to hit me
Mm-hmm.
with the headlines, then is what I hear you saying.
Yes.
Like, tell me the important
Yes.
stuff. Don't waste your time putting things that don't matter. Like,
Yep.
again, all those software applications for sure. And again,
Yes.
we don't need to know what job you had in college. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
If it is not
Mm-hmm.
adding value to the role that you're applying for, that's another reason why people have these resumes that are way, 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 way too long now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so certainly that PDF, I'm like, come on, y'all, we know we got to save that thing as a PDF, but saving it with your name, how helpful that could be with someone like, oh, okay, I'm looking at Janai Thornton's resume. Okay, now I know who I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking
Mm-hmm.
to. Thank you for those tips. Super helpful. So any advice on cover letters, Jasmine? Because you gave some really good tips on resumes, but are they necessary? Do they really carry any weight? Is it just like an extra, kind of like the sprinkles on top, or are they really impactful?
I'm so glad you asked about cover letters. I will say that Um, I have seen the necessity for cover letters decrease over the last couple of years. So not as many jobs are asking for those, which is great. I know there's a whole businesses out there just to write cover letters because people dread it so much. But for the roles where a letter is required, here's a couple of things. A cover letter is not a regurgitation of your resume. So don't write in your cover letter, these are the jobs I had and for how, yeah, we saw that in your resume. The point of the cover letter is two things. Give me context into why you are where you are now in your career, right? So if you're a career changer, what prompted that? If you have risen through the ranks in your role, how many people did you manage, or what was your most prized project or success that if you had 30 seconds in an elevator with the CEO and they said, why should I hire you? That's what should be in your cover letter. So it's context around your career and your accomplishments. And the second part of it is, why are you a good fit for this specific job? So again, I can look at your resume all day, but tell me, based on what you've done in your resume and your passion and your areas of interest, or what you understand about our company or a job or the culture or this industry, why are you a good fit? And so that gives you a little bit more uh, kind of direction of how to um, pick focused topics on your cover letter versus just saying, I did this and I did this, and like that's already in your resume.
Right. Thank you, Jasmine, for those tips on the
Mhm.
resumes and cover letters. Y'all should be out there winning now with these new templates. Shout out to Canva for the templates too. I know people on my team love
Mhm.
Canva. Happy to know that they have some great resume templates as well. All
And
right.
actually, Janai, I'll say
Mm-hmm.
for cover letters, and I think people understand at this point, Chat GPT and the AI tools, they're not to be taken literal. It's a starting place. So, for example, I was just, talking with a friend, they still Airbnb, and they said, I need to come up with house rules, right? You go to Chat GPT and then spits you out 15. You take the 5, you edit them to your home, right? So with cover letters, that's also a great place to start. You can say, write me a cover letter for, an experiential marketing leader, for a media company based in Chicago, right? And it'll give you that. But then of course you need to customize it to your experience, why you want the job, that specific company, why you're qualified, what your successes are. But it's a good way to not start with a blank sheet of paper, which is often people's hurdle to
Right.
be able to getting through, beginning to end of creating that cover letter.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So, one more quick question
Mhm.
before we go to our Thank Me Later hotline caller. Do sites like Indeed really work?
Yes, I have 2 job postings up there right now. They're on Indeed, they're on LinkedIn, they are on the company's, website, it's on their Instagram. Yes, Indeed works, LinkedIn works, Glassdoor, works. Those are, places where you can go to find roles. There's also, I would say, industry specific sites. So if you want a remote job, a
Right.
completely remote job, you can go to those sites. But the challenge is they charge you to actually go on those sites and see the jobs. So a LinkedIn or Indeed or Glassdoor is a good place to start.
To start. Okay, perfect. All right,
Mhm.
Jasmine, we are going to go to the Thank Me Later hotline for a call. Someone has a question for you today.
All right, I'm ready for the question.
Hello, my name is Terry. I'm from Rhode Island. Um, I have been a teacher for the past 5 years and I absolutely love it, but it just isn't paying me enough. And I think I'm ready to transition out and do something new. I've always had a passion for event planning. I've done it kind of on the side here and there. Nothing really serious though. How do you recommend going through a career change? Everything that I've been looking at requires so many years of experience that I technically don't really have, although I really know that I have the skills for it. So what do you recommend? Thanks.
And tell me her name again.
Her name was Terry, and I'm so happy
Okay.
Terry submitted that question because so many
Yes.
people want to pivot, and they're
Mhm.
trying to figure out how do you get into this other industry? Like, how
Mhm.
do you actually make
Mhm.
that happen? Can't wait to hear your response.
Yeah, sure, sure. And I absolutely love career changers. I've actually specialized in that area for around the past 10 years or so. Little known fact is about every 7 years, people kind of pivot in their career, even if it's tangential. So it's natural. Folks sometimes have a lot of shame or anxiety around, I spent all this time in this one area, I got degrees in it, and now I'm going to pivot. What are people going to say or think? But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to spend hours and hours in that job.
Absolutely.
You have to maintain your sanity and do something that brings you peace, joy, or the compensation that you need. So I definitely support the what I like to call the power of the pivot. So now to get to Terry's question. So she says that she's a teacher. It does not make enough money for her, and she has experience in event planning. And so I want to talk to Terry about parallel paths or two options. The first option is entrepreneurial, and the second option is a W-2 role or a 1099 role where she would be working for someone else. So I'll speak to the entrepreneurial path first. And I'm part of a couple of masterminds that are focused on, women in business and what they all remind us of. And this is the advice I'll give to Terry. If you have a paying client, then you are in business. You don't need a fancy website and you have to figure out your marketing and what about, no. If you have someone who is paying you for that service, then you now run a business. And if you can get a pipeline of that, then you now have a business.
Look,
So I say that.
amen. All I got to
What'd you
say to
say?
that is amen.
Amen.
Right.
You can worry about all that other stuff later. If
For
people aren't
sure.
paying you for your services, you can have all the websites and the employees, and it doesn't matter. Are people buying your services? And so Terry just said that she's done it on the side for a while, which means that she has people who seek her out for her services.
Absolutely.
So I think Yes. So I think she already has more of a foot in the game than she thinks. So a couple of things that I would tell her is to, even as a side hustle, legitimize it. So become an LLC. And I say that and people get overwhelmed, but you can go to inkfile.com or anywhere, and it's literally 3 buttons: pay your money, name it, and then open up a business bank account. And you are, in business. So whatever side work that she's doing now, I think if she moves forward to legitimizing it, that is a path towards pivoting. So that's what I'll say about the entrepreneurial path. Um, if she wants to work for an event planning company, which she mentioned that all the things that she's looking at, she doesn't have enough years of experience. I actually made a pivot from management consulting to working in media. And when I say in media, I was like a producer on sets of television shows, movies, etc. And I had 2 separate resumes. And so all of the side work that I was doing and the side hustling, whether I was getting paid or not, I amassed enough experience to be able to put together a full resume to say, these are all of the activities that I've done in this space. And so I think she's probably underestimating what she's already done so far. But if she even just takes a moment and puts all of that on paper, she can see what are the types of roles, what are the types of events, what are the types of clients that she's had. And then she can start to look for more opportunities to build that out, because event planning requires a load of people in every single area. You always need extra hands. And so there is not an event planner out there that won't say, don't come the day of and help put chairs and flowers. And there's always a need for that. And so I think that she could begin building out that resume. And then I would also say identifying whether there's a weekend certification class, an online certification, but any type of training that she can do around event planning to help her move into that space. And that's something that she can do evenings, weekends, during the summer, again, as she is still a full-time teacher, because that will put her in even more in the middle of it, right? So she'll get to network with other people who are doing the same thing, but then also ideally find someone that she could apprentice under, find an opportunity for internships, and that will help her be able to move into that pivot of a new career in event planning full time.
Right. Jasmine, I love the idea of this whole secondary resume, though, where you can focus.
Oh,
So
yes.
now it's just like you're not a dabbler, a little bit of this, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of that. Like, oh, let me show you
Mm-hmm.
everything. Let me brag about everything that I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing in this particular field. I love that. Thanks for sharing
Mm-hmm.
that. So,
And sorry, Janai, I just want to say on
sure.
that secondary resume, one of my tips is to use seasons instead of exact dates and years, because when you're dabbling, people will say, well, what's this big gap? Or, you didn't do this for 2 years. But if you say, summer 2024, or if you just put the year that you did it,
Right.
they don't need to know that it was only for 2 months in that year.
Right.
And it's a way to have a little bit more consistency as well. So I
Yeah,
just wanted
I
to add
love
that.
that. Really, really good tips. Before
Thank
we
you.
move on to my second set of questions I have for you, I just want to
Hmm.
go back and let us highlight some of the resources that you've already shared. Um,
Hmm.
you mentioned Glassdoor, you mentioned LinkedIn. Also, of course, I want to mention your website, Career Convos, and that's across Instagram, all the social media platforms,
Yep.
correct, is all Career Convos.
Correct. Hmm.
Definitely want to make sure that we mention the FU Pay Me salary negotiation playbook. Um,
Yes.
Definitely want to highlight that. But we also have a promo code that I wanted to mention now. So the promo code is Thank Me Later. It's all one word. So if you go to Jasmine's website, you get 10% off. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you make that investment because, when you need help, you need a coach. When you need help, you need a coach. You need some training. So make that investment in this playbook to help you navigate that and get the compensation that you absolutely deserve. Any other resources that you wanted to highlight, Jasmine?
No, no, that's perfect, Janai. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And I do want to call out that the playbook is it's not long. It's about 15 pages, and it's really probably takes maybe an hour or so to just sit down and walk yourself through what are all of the things that I need to be thinking about as I prepare to have a negotiation conversation, or as I just think about, am I getting my worth in this current role, and how do I level up? So it's designed to be really tactical.
Right.
It's a PDF fill in the blank, and so it is customizable to you, to your specific numbers, to your specific experience. And it is in the last page in the playbook is a one sheeter that you can actually take into a meeting or have up on the other side of your Zoom to walk you through exactly how you are going to navigate that conversation. So a lot of effort, time went into it, and my experience doing salary negotiation over years has all gone into this playbook.
Yeah. So again, promo code is thank me later for your 10% off. And you go to careercombos.com for that. Thank you, Jasmine, for that promo code. We appreciate it. All right. A
Yes.
few more questions before we wrap up. So, from that question from Terry, just really started me thinking a lot about people who want to pivot. So it sounded
Mhm.
like Terry was already down the road doing some events. But for those people who have not even begun that, but they're like, you know
Mhm.
what? They're feeling that getting that 7-year itch that you refer to.
Mhm.
What's the step? And particularly people who want to stay within corporate, which is completely fine. How
Mhm.
can they begin that journey of proving that they are capable of, adding value and putting points on the board in a completely different area potentially?
Mhm. Yeah, I would say, if they and I'm gonna speak specifically to the parameters that you just gave. So if they want to stay in corporate, but they're trying to figure out how to pivot, I think people would be surprised at there are often opportunities in any direction that they want to go in, especially if they're in a larger organization, that they can dip their toe in. So, for example, if I think about Terry and she talks about event planning, but she works as a teacher, guess what? There's all types of events at school. So technically, she could probably think about building out her resume if she's helping to plan the dances and the field trips and the bake sales and the field day, right? All of those are events
Absolutely.
that require mass coordination that she can do through her day job. For example, when I was pivoting and still in my corporate role, I was at a larger company and they had a production arm, right? Because you have to create internal videos to say the CEO's speaking to the team for our annual summit, or when we all go away to a leadership conference, we create a recap video to say, look how great this development was. So I leaned into how can I do media production even in my organization. And so I would say that's the first place to start to think about within your where you volunteer, your hobbies, your day job. If you look really hard, there's probably an opportunity that's tangential to where you're trying to pivot and to be able to get your feet wet in that area.
Appreciate that advice, Jasmine. Another question for you. So, are there any
Mhm.
industries or job sectors that are particularly receptive to hiring candidates from more diverse backgrounds? And I'm talking about professional backgrounds because, you'll hear some people maybe studied philosophy or studied something general and now they're doing X. So, have you noticed any industries that are a little bit more receptive to pivoting in or, just some diversity in background?
Hmm. That's interesting. I would say the first thing that jumps out to me is probably marketing for two reasons. One, there's so many companies that have committed faux pas because they did not have diverse eyes and minds on the team,
Right.
right? So they created a commercial and now it's perceived as biased or racist. And they're like, oh, maybe you should have had a little bit more diversity in that thought. So that's one place that I would that comes to mind directly. I know there is a really big push in STEM. And
For
so a
sure.
lot of roles that are looking for product managers, data management, coding. I've seen programs, I wish I could think of some of them off the top of my head, but are focused on minorities and women, getting them, even if you've never had a background in that space at all, getting them certified and training them on how to do that role, and then placing them in tech companies.
Okay. Thank you for that. So,
Mhm.
something related to the interview process. When people have gaps on their resume, what's
Mhm.
the appropriate way to address that?
Mm, that's a great question. Um, there are a couple of things. I was actually just coaching a client recently about this. And so he had some medical issues. And I think he was out of work maybe 6 months to a year, and he didn't necessarily want to share that with the new job that he was applying to because they might say, "Well, is this going to pop up again? Are you a reliable employee?" And so, I told him, I said, you have two options. You can either be honest about it, but then also share that you have now found the right medical management, whether it's the balance of, doctors or medication. And so
Right.
now it's completely under control. And you were glad that you had that time to be able to invest in that. So it's making you even more productive and trustworthy as an employee. Or you can try to pivot that time out, and excuse me, the way you talk about that time out and connect it to how you've built, kind of other skills or value add to the role that you're coming into. So, for example, some companies have sabbaticals now. So even if you, used to do, for example, when I was at Deloitte, they had a sabbatical and somebody left for 6 months and became a yoga instructor and then came back. But they talked about how the time that they took to travel exposed them to different cultures, and now they bring that into their work,
Right.
or the fact that they were able to prevent burnout, and so now they're even more re-energized and ready to come back to work. Those are different ways that they can talk about it. So I think being honest about the timeout, and then just relating it to how you were better prepared for the role, I think is always a way to go.
And as we get ready to wrap on the Q&A part of this
Mhm.
episode, any topic or any question that you would like to address?
Yeah, sure. One of the things that often comes up, especially because salary negotiation is such a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Um, I don't know if people realize that there is legislation in somewhat across the 50 states about employers asking what your current salary is, what your current pay is. And so lots of states have banned the fact that a company can ask what your current pay is. And to give context, the reason why that's banned is because if you're underpaid as a woman or a minority, and the new company is basing what your new pay should be on based on your old pay, you'll never catch up. You'll always be underpaid. And so instead of having a conversation about what you're currently being paid, it should be a conversation about what is the fair market value of the role in which you are applying, period. And so if conversations can start there, then that is a better chance for you to get your fair pay. So the other part to that, though, is getting your fair pay means doing research.
Right.
And in my salary negotiation playbook, we have a page, and I can pull that up in a second, with um, uh, places where you can go to find out, sources to find out what you should be paid fairly in the market. And I just pulled it up. It's on page 6 in the playbook, and it's called Do Your Research. And so there's, let's see, 8 different recommended sources of how to be able to understand kind of what should the range be for that role. And so I just want to make everyone aware that there's plenty of resources out there, but to also do that research before you even engage in the first conversation. If you're applying for a new job or if you're in a current job and talking about a pay increase. So that's always my burning platform that I want to remind folks of.
Yep. Do your work. Sounds like a little preparation is necessary. Do your work.
Yeah.
All right, Jasmine. So as we close, we want to know what's your thank me later financial tip. So finish this sentence for me. If you
Okay.
blank, You will thank me later.
Hmm. If you, I'm going to say, if you prepare and practice, you will thank me later.
Okay.
And the context for that is do your research, just like what I talked about. What is your fair market worth? But not only doing the research, practice having the conversation. You can have the numbers in front of you, but if you're stumbling over your words and you don't know what to say or how to start the
Right.
conversation or come back if they say no, then you still might trip over yourself. So prepare and then practice. Then you'll thank me later.
Okay. Love that. And so,
Yeah.
since Thank Me Later is really centered and rooted into leaving a legacy, what does leaving
Mhm.
a legacy mean to you?
Mm. Leaving a legacy to me is about putting things in place that long after I'm gone, my children, my grandchildren will be able to say that they had the knowledge that they needed to continue building wealth, and they had more than what the previous generation had.
So I appreciate that. All right, y'all. So for your call to action, please keep in mind, remember, she gave you the tips on revamping your resume, okay? Canva. You need to do the research. You've got to be prepared and do your research. So when it's time for the
Mhm.
ask or the interview, you know that you'll be ready. Jasmine mentioned several really good resources: Glassdoor, LinkedIn. We have amazing content, previous content with Jasmine within the Thank Me Later community. So you can definitely engage with us there. And then, of course, you can go to her website, careerconvos.com, and you can get her playbook. If you pay me, her salary negotiation playbook, and you can use the code Thank Me Later for your 10% off. And to stay connected to Jasmine across all platforms, Instagram, her website, and LinkedIn, it is Career Convos. And we just want to say thank you for engaging with us. Any thoughts? Any last thoughts, Jasmine, as we get ready to wrap
No,
up?
thank you for that recap. I just encourage, and there's also merchandise as well to go with the playbook. So
Love
for
that.
example, there's a candle that if you're nervous about having this conversation, you can light the candle and
Right.
say, I am worthy of my worth. Let me get in this
Right.
headspace and let me do this research and let me practice. And so there's other merchandise to help people demand their worth in the market. That's what I'm here for.
Okay, no, I love that. We thank you for being a guest with us again and for coming back, and looking forward to having you again. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Thank Me Later show, where we help you master your money and transform your life. You can engage with us at our website, thethankmelatorshow.com, and on the social media platforms at Janai Thornton and TML Money. And again, don't forget to use that code Thank Me Later for your 10% off at Career Convos. Thank you, Jasmine, for being with us today. We really appreciate you.